I'm a retired Marine Master Gunnery Sergeant Bob Talmadge, and I was born in New Haven, Connecticut in 1930, and I was the seventh child in a family of 11 children. So I had a lot of siblings, brothers and sisters to play with. I joined the Marine Corps in 1947. And at the time that I went in, my very best friend, who lived right down the street from me, joined with me, and the two of us went through recruit training together.
My name is Rose Talmadge. I was born in 1927 in Hamden, Connecticut. I'm from a family of 5, and I went to a business high school.
I see.
I met Bob, as he said, in 51, and we married about a year and a half later. I think he came away from it with a big appreciation for the Korean people.
Oh.
He really did. It didn't manifest itself right away, that I could see, but his life is all Koreans, Korean friends, anything he can do with the Koreans. I have to say this, you might delete it, but that refrigerator is an LG.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
No, we don't want to delete that part.
Okay.
In 1963, after we were married, I got transferred to Korea as an advisor to the Korean Marine Corps at Chinhae. And I spent 13 months there. During the war, I spent 9.5 months. The tour of duty for the veterans, who were the people, Marines who were in Korea, was 13 months.
13 months.
But since I went with the Marine Brigade, and we were the first ones in, when they started rotating people back, I was lucky enough to come back on the third draft, and I only spent 9.5 months in Korea. The difference between 1963 and 1994 was like a whole new world.
Whole new world.
Because in 1963, nothing had really changed. I didn't get into Seoul to see any of the bombed out areas from the war, but the people were not, and at that time, in 63, they had military control of the country.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, outside of Masan, during the war, when we went into Masan, right outside of Masan, a bridge was blown, and there were wooden barriers set up. At nighttime, the Korean people would come and take the wooden barriers for fun. The war broke out on the 24th of June in California, and on the 14th of July, we were aboard ship and leaving San Diego with all of our equipment.
Oh, that's right. So you didn't leave on the day?
No.
So when did you actually left?
All the decisions had to be made in Washington as what was going to happen, who was going to do what. And then President Truman said we're going to send troops in, and they sent these occupation troops out of Japan into Korea.
Right.
The 24th Infantry Division was the very first unit that got into
so you left California July 14th?
July 14th.
And when did you arrive in Busan?
The 2nd of August.
So you said that you participated in the Incheon landing.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you went to Incheon through the Busan port and then through the ship?
Well, now what happened, we went eastward from Busan toward Chinju because the North Koreans already captured Chinju, and their next objective was Masan. And they were going to Masan, and they would have made it if the Marine Brigade had not gone ashore, because the Marine Brigade went out on the first week, about somewhere around the 4th or 5th of August. They moved up into the front lines, and they hit the North Korean 4th Infantry Division. They hit them not only with their 6 rifle companies, who were well trained, but with their aviation. And right offshore, we had aircraft carrier Bedouin Strait. And the Bedouin Strait had our Marine aircraft on. Now, when our Marines prepared to go off into battle, there was a flight of planes overhead. Would be that we moved up in the daytime. Now, what happened was that Womido Island set offshore of Incheon. and they determined that had to be taken in the morning, and then the main landing in the afternoon, 12 hours later. So they sent one of the regiments that was one of the battalions from the who had been at Incheon at Busan, and already had been fighting North Koreans for 39 days with experience. They sent them in the morning at 4:30 in the morning of September 15th. They sent them in to capture Womido, and they had Womido captured by 10 o'clock in the morning. Then those Marines wanted to go into Incheon, but they said no, because we have the plans for the landing in the afternoon. You can't go in, you'll be in the way. So they had to sit on Womido all day, 12 hours, until the landing in the afternoon. And I was on the deck of the ship, and suddenly the landing was going to be at, I believe, 5:30 or 6:30 in the afternoon. And suddenly at 4 o'clock, all the Navy ships opened up. Boom! And then the rocket ships were sent. Boom, boom, boom! And all these rockets were going up into the city. The American airplanes, primarily Marines, were coming overhead, getting targets, going in, and all of a sudden, within an hour, you couldn't see Incheon. It was covered with smoke. These are service medals, and one that I'm particularly proud of. When I joined the Marine Division in 1948, one of the first things they told me was I had to get a Presidential Unit Citation, which is this one right here, but just a ribbon, no stars on it, because the 1st Marine Division had been awarded the medal during World War II a couple of times. And anyone joining the division had to wear the ribbon because the division had been awarded it. So while I was at Camp Pendleton, I wore this ribbon with no stars on it, and I didn't do anything to earn it. It was just that the division had it.
Right.
It's a unit. Okay, now, when I went to Korea and spent 9.5 months. Now, in the American military forces, very few military organizations have been awarded a Presidential Unit Citation. I went to Korea, and in 9.5 months, I came back and I was authorized 4 Presidential Unit Citations. One for the Busan perimeter, one for Incheon, Seoul, one for the Changjin Reservoir, Chosin Reservoir, and one for Central Korea. We were heading north, as our units were heading north. On the 2nd of November, the 24th Chinese Infantry Division attacked the 7th Marine Regiment. Now those are 3-to-1 odds, 4-to-1 odds, at nighttime, unexpected. The 7th Regiment went up, but they had replaced a North Korean Army unit, and the South Korean Army unit. The South Koreans had captured some Chinese soldiers and had battles with Chinese soldiers, and so they interviewed or questioned these soldiers, and they said that they were part of the 24th Infantry Division and the 124th Division. The 125th Division was up at Hagaru-ri, and the 126th Division was over at Fujin Reservoir that was a little further over east. Then they said that they had come into Korea with the 9th Army, Field Army, which consisted of Field Army, which consisted of 6 or 8 armies, and each army had 3 or 4, usually 4, divisions in it. What had happened was that the Chinese army had come in across the Yalu River. They had told the Americans, if you come too close to the Yalu, we're going to enter the war. But MacArthur did not believe that. The communists had just taken over China the year before, and MacArthur didn't feel that they were ready for war, and that the Chinese peasants were no match for the American fighting man. What he did know was that the army, our army, I think they had probably about 160,000 men in the 8th Army, and we had 15,000 men up at the Chosin Reservoir. Back and fighting their way back out of UDMD, they had seen no civilians, but all of a sudden, out of the woods, out of the caves, out of caves.
You saw them came out?
No, I didn't see them because I wasn't there. They saw them, and they started following the Marines down. And then as they got down to Hagaru, more came out. More came from up in the towns, up in where the army was. And as it came, it was like raindrops falling in the mountain and building up into a torrent. By the time they got to Hungnam, the seaport, there were 99,000 civilians on the pier.
Did you see them there?
Well, I saw them, yes.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have any pictures of my own, but I got pictures in the magazines.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, they were there. And the ship next to us was a LST. And the hole in that LST was completely filled with Korean civilians. The deck was completely filled with Korean civilians. There was a ship out in the harbor that was empty, except in the bottom hold in the front, there was 90,000 gallons of aviation gasoline. That ship came in through the mine fields that had an opening. But if they had hit one of those mines, it would have blown half of Hungnam apart. 90,000 gallons of fuel. But they made it into the pier. And the captain of the ship was up there, and the loading officer, who was an army man, called up and said, how many civilians can you take aboard? And the captain said, 2,500, maybe 3,000. And they were next to us. So these Korean civilians had to leave all their stuff on the pier, climb up onto the ship, come across their ship and onto the USS Victory. And so they took them in these empty holes, they put them down into the hole and pushed them back in. And then they put a cover up partially. Then they brought more in, put them in the second hole, then the third hole. They were back through the whole ship. Then they started putting them on the weather deck. When the ship left Hungnam, it didn't have 2,500 or 3,000. It had 14,000 people in it. Just like these Korean civilians were going in. In fact, one of the ships, the LST-845, was taking Korean civilians out. That was the ship that I went ashore on at Wonsan in late October. I went ashore on the 845. Now it's right next to us, loading civilians.
So when did you come down to Busan?
We probably got down there. We left there somewhere around the 15th of December. And probably got down to Busan in 1 or 2 days. It wasn't that far from Hungnam down to Busan. And when we got down there, then we moved over to Masan and set up a camp, and we got new replacements in and new uniforms. We spent a month rebuilding our division. And then in January, we left for Pohang because there was guerrillas operating in the area, North Korean guerrillas. And so we had what they call the Pohang guerrilla hunt. And then from there, in late February, we moved up into Andong, and then we're headed over toward Wonju.
Andong is one of the most beautiful, pristine place in terms of Yi Dynasty culture. What did you see there?
I really don't remember much about, because we were at the train station. And I showed you some of those pictures of the children. We were at the train station, so I didn't really get to see the town at all.
So what happened to Andong after that Andong?
Well, after Andong, we moved up to Wonju, in the Wonju area. And I was there on the 5th of April, or the 6th of April. And I was in my tent in the morning, and the first sergeant came by, and he put his head in the door, and he said, "Oh, good morning, Lucky." And he turned around and left out. Nobody calls me Lucky. I went running out. The 6th of April was my birthday. And I went out, and I said, "For Sergeant, what do you call me Lucky?" He said, "Your orders are on, you're going back to the United States." On my birthday.
That's...
But the Chinese had an attack going at the time, and they held off until either the last week of April or the first week of May before I finally went aboard ship, the George Antelope, and went to Japan, to Kobe, and got new uniforms and everything, and then went back aboard the Antelope to California.